All right, everybody, welcome into the Sideline Fantasy Football League Draft Recap Show. It is your host and reigning champion, Eric, with his co-host and good old pal Crimmy. How we doing?
Well, pretty good. Pretty good.
Usually we wait a day to do this show, but we're hyped. We're so glad fantasy's back. We're in the swing of things. It's crazy. I don't know if you felt the same way, Crim, but man, even with all this craziness going on in the world and everything happening, for some reason, even without the lack of sports for a while, this draft came up fast. Like usually it seems like we're waiting and waiting for it and waiting for it, but it just seemed like this offseason went pretty darn quick. Or were you kind of on the other end of the spectrum?
Um, it went by fast because you didn't really hear a lot of football talk, and a lot of the time you're hearing, guys coming out of camp and what's going on with camp and this, that, and the other, and like we would normally see games being played right now with
Right.
preseason and all that stuff. So usually when that happens, our football fix I wouldn't say is given to us, but we kind of know what's going on, and the preseason kind of it does drag on. So I feel like that kind of adds to what takes so long to get to actual drafts.
Oh, for sure, no doubt about it. And we're getting close. We're getting very close to the start of the season, and we're here to grade your teams as great as we can because we always do a phenomenal job of it. We never get it wrong. We're clearly always on the ball with it. I didn't even really like my team after last year's draft, and I won the entire league. So we'll see how we do. This is all in good fun. But before we get to that, Krim, let's talk about the actual draft for a couple minutes. What surprised you? What hit at you? What were some things that you just kind of noticed? Not necessarily breaking teams down yet, but just kind of was there any wow moments? Was there a big moment where you were surprised by? Any big reaches you noticed early? What was your just reaction to the draft? It went
Uh,
really fast. That
yeah,
was
it went
one.
really quickly. Um, as Rob said in the kind of live ongoings, that this draft is kind of the most unpredictable draft he's participating in, and I would agree. Just off jump, like to me, it's easy to kind of point at Kyle with Clyde Edwards-Helaire picking him at 7. Obviously, the offense that he's in is fantastic, but that to me was kind of the biggest shocker early. There was more obviously as he went on, but I'm going to let you take the floor here for a little bit while I kind of scroll down and just check things out. Did you kind of feel the same way I did with that pick there?
Yeah, I did too. And here's the thing: every single year, there, especially lately these last years, there's always a rookie running back that does very well. And if there's one 2.2 that is in a prime position to do so, it is Hilaire. Personally, from a draft strategy perspective, I hardly ever like drafting rookie running backs. But in the same breath, last year I felt almost forced to take Josh Jacobs last year. I felt like I had to. Running backs were they. I didn't like the direction it was going. I took Jacobs, and it ended up being great. So here's a guy that's projected to be sixth, or the starting running back. Damian Williams is gone. Shouldn't be much of a split. So we'll see. I would not be shocked if he's a top 10 running back at year's end, but it is a risk, no doubt about it. It is a risk. A lot of people are high on Miles Sanders this year. I'm still not quite sure if I feel comfortable taking him in round one. But other than that, the draft went, I don't want to say status quo. There was some reaches, but one thing I kind of mentioned during our live draft thing going on was I like some of the reaches at running back because I planned on taking some of these running backs, but man, were people going running back heavy early. And not only that, in a lot of mocks, Kelsey and Kittle go mid round two. Kittle didn't go till the very end of round three, and Kelsey didn't go until the middle of round. Sorry, Kittle went end of round two, and Kelsey middle of round three. Running backs went early. We're talking Mixon 13, um, Fournette at 20, Le'Veon at 21, when sometimes those guys were going rounds threes or fours of mock drafts. So people wanted running backs early in this draft, it seemed like, which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of we saw that with Rob, like taking Le'Veon, like you said, in round 2. It just it's not somebody I would have done myself, but I can't.
And I love Le'Veon. I do.
Yeah,
I do.
so
But
do
but
I.
I personally was thinking
Knock
him.
him.
I can get him in round three and feel awesome. Or
Yeah,
even in some mocks, round four he was going in. But I understand that the star power name is still there.
yeah, and that's kind of what trickled down to guys like Hopkins dropping, guys like Kelsey dropping. It's just preferences for people, and it kind of once that happens early on in the draft, it has a ripple effect of kind of having the later rounds in the draft have more value than they should at times, but we'll get more into that with kind of breaking down what people picked.
For sure, no doubt about it. So, with that being said, let's just dive into it. We're going to try to spend about 5-6 minutes on each team. We're going to give a grade, maybe a couple strengths, a couple weaknesses, and then give a grade. And at the end, we will have our 3 playoff teams from each side. So, I'm not necessarily going to predict records. We're going to give a grade. We're going to pick our 6 teams for the playoffs, and we'll see how amazing we do by the end of the year or how awful we are. So, based on that, let's just start off, go top to bottom, and that would leave me being at the very top. Let's click on my team and take a look at it. So, back to back and back again, which is exactly what I'm hoping for this year. Let's start off with you. I won't toot my own horn. I won't say what I think if my team's awful. What do you think of the reigning back-to-back champs team?
At first glance, just looking at kind of what sticks out to me is more so the running back position for you, because you got Henry in the first round, which obviously you're solidifying one of your running backs. Good to go. Don't even got to think about it every week. You just kind of throw him in there, see what he does. That's done. The second slot for you is where it draws concerns because you have in there DeAndre Swift. Like you just said moments ago, it's hard to trust some rookie running backs. I think Kyler Edwards-Helaire is kind of the one exception. If he one of the two exceptions in my mind. Now, Swift is somebody I actually liked myself just because Johnson got hurt. Guys seem to thrive in that system afterwards, and I don't know kind of what their deal is with that. But just looking at your running backs afterwards, like you kind of are not, having to take shots at guys. You have guys who can play, like Breda and AP. But you also took shots at Antonio Gibson just in case he gets the run of the work over AP, so you save yourself there. But RB2 for you every week, I feel like, is kind of going to be not a crapshoot, but a coin toss, and for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is me and you do probably 5-6 mocks together every single year. Not a ton, but enough to kind of see what we're going to do. And I know I didn't take DeAndre Swift in one mock draft. And that, again, goes to what Rob was saying earlier, that this league throws some curveballs at you. When you actually get into your legit live drafts, you sometimes got to move on your feet. And that's what I did here. I usually don't like going running back wide receiver combos when it comes to the same team. I think, again, the Lions are one of those few exceptions where they throw the ball a ton. I expect DeAndre Swift to be involved in the passing game as well a little bit. And here's the thing. They've had Kerryon Johnson for a couple of years, and I don't hate Kerryon Johnson in a fantasy aspect. I think he can be all right. But he still hasn't quite grabbed that by the horns yet. He's just not. He's not got a ton of carries. He just hasn't. And I think they spent a pick on DeAndre Swift this year, and I think he should get the brunt of that workload, at least a more of a 50-50 split. I'm thinking at least 60-65 percent split I'm hoping for. And that's the thing is I did get an elite running back at the top, which I'm happy with. I got Lamar Jackson so late last year, so it does hurt a little bit having to take him at round 2, but it's hard to not. It really is hard to not do that. And if for some reason Lamar Jackson falls off, gets hurt, whatever, I could throw Stafford in there as well. I do like my bench. I did think that was one of the things I liked about it a lot. I loaded up on running backs. Breda, for all we know, could be a starter there. Gibson could be a starter. Peterson could be a starter. They're going to split carries. And honestly, again, Cam Akers was taken. Henderson wasn't used a lot last year, but who's to say Henderson doesn't step up and take that role, and which a lot of people thought he was going to do before Akers was drafted. So, and I got a 1,000-yard receiver pretty late too in John Brown, and he's going to have Diggs opposite him. And I handcuffed Ertz a little bit with Goddard there. So, I like my team. I like Ertz and Sutton. I think I have a decent amount here. Galladay was really impressive last year, but you're right. I do have big concerns about that RB2 position, and also we are half-point PPR, and as great as Derrick Henry is, he's not going to catch the ball much out of the backfield. But overall, Crim, any last words, maybe a last little summary and a grade, what did you think overall how I did?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at your team, just breaking it down to what I kind of put into grading the team itself. Was more so the RB2 was the first look. Obviously, you have concerns, so do I. Your receiving core, just look, the starters you have were solid. The bench to me has some concern, but I can see that it's also a lot of handcuffs, so I can respect that because you're safe in any situation, kind of, for most of your team. So you're playing it safe at that point. I wouldn't say you played it too safe because obviously you can't ever really be too safe. But all in all, if the RB2 is really the only concern I have, Lamar Jackson kind of can create an
He's an
RB2
RB.
type
Yeah,
of
right?
pointage in his own play, so I can kind of write that off to a degree. But grade wise, I graded your team as a B minus in my opinion.
Yeah, I gave myself a B. I put my weakness as running back, even though I do have Henry. Again, definitely not against Swift, but that's someone that could possibly be traded here, or he could end up end up by Josh Jacobs. Who knows? The Lions have never seemed to commit to the run. We'll see if they do that a little bit more this year with injury concerns with quarterback and such and such. So we'll see. But I gave myself a B. You gave me a B minus. Not too shabby for the defending champion, the defending champion, back to back and back again. Let's move on to the second team. All right, let's move on to your team. We're starting off with the two hosts team, Nukem Jukem. You had pick number 3 in the draft, and I'll start this one off, right? Because obviously, you started off last time. So I think your team overall looks really solid. I like Kyler Murray. I think he reminds me very much of a Cam Newton entering an MVP type season type of deal. I'm not going to go out there and say Kyler Murray's winning MVP. I'm not quite jumping on the hype train that hard, but I liked so much of what I saw from him last year, almost throwing for 4,000 yards, running for 500 yards. I think this is a guy that can jump from 20 to 28 to close to a 30 touchdown range passing this year. And I think he might even jump another 150 yards rushing this year. I like Kyler Murray a lot as a top 5, top 6 fantasy option this year. Zeke is Zeke. In fact, in some cases I would have even taken him over Barkley just for consistency purposes. Huge fan of Singletary this year. I know he struggled to get in the end zone last year, but without Frank Gore, I know they drafted a backup running back in Zach Moss kind of early, which draws some question marks. But I like Devin Singletary picking up the load a little bit more this year, and I feel safe with him as an RB2. I think you have one of the best receiving cores in the league in Godwin and Hopkins. My concern for you is obviously the tight end position. Jarwin did not show enough for me last year to feel good at that position. You might be lucky right now to get 6 or 7 a week from that position, and you don't really have a backup plan in that case. So I'm a little concerned about Jarwin, but maybe you had a little bit more upside him on this year. I do like the handcuff and Mozart and Coleman. Dillon might be a good back. I know Aaron Jones seems to have that rattled down, but a lot of people are saying Dillon might get some work. Michelle, as annoying as he can be fantasy wise, he's not going to catch the ball. Matchup wise, he might be able to get in a little bit here and there. And I love that Tyler Boyd right now is on your bench. I think he's a lot of teams' wide receiver twos, and you have Tyler Boyd on your bench. And who knows what Henry Ruggs does this year? He could be a sleeper pick for an 1,000-yard rookie season. So overall, I like your team a lot. Very, very concerned at tight end. But overall, with what you have on your bench, pairing a couple pieces, I don't see a reason why, if it came to it, you could not upgrade that position. So I thought you did a really good job drafting, and I actually gave you a B plus. What's your thoughts?
Thank you. Just to kind of expand on what you said, I agree with everything that you said. I kind of felt the same way as I was drafting. With Blake Jarwin, just to kind of open some eyes here, that team at tight end looked very, I wouldn't say, for lack of it doesn't look great because you're used to seeing Jason Witten there, and that's a big tier name. Like, that's somebody that everybody knows. But with what's going on this year, they like to use their tight ends. We know that. And with the new coach in Mike McCarthy, who, when he was in Green Bay, what happened? Those tight ends in Green Bay strived. With Rodgers, sure, I'm not sitting there saying Dak is Rodgers by any means. But game plan wise, the tight end is more involved than ever with McCarthy. So I liked that in Jarwin. He was kind of, I had other options that I liked more so, but they were taken before I had a chance to kind of get
He's
my
only on
hands on them.
15% of rosters. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You might like
It,
him a lot, but that's a risky pick to
it's
put as your
not
starter.
somebody that I'm sitting here saying that's my end all be all tight end. Obviously, I know
Right.
it can be upgraded, but I'm not going to kind of take away the fact that well, first of all, the notes say it looks good in camp, so people are saying that he's looking better. But that, to me, he's more of he's going to be touchdown dependent. I can't sit here and argue with you about that because we both know that's kind of the case. But the people around him kind of create opportunities to give him the chances to score in the red zone, where you're going to cover CD, you're going to cover Zeke, you're going to cover Gallup, you're going to cover Cooper, and no one cares about Jarwin. So like he's just in the back of the end zone, hanging out, waving at Dak. Dak's hitting them. Everyone's happy except for whoever I'm playing, and then we're moving on from there. But yeah, obviously it's somewhere I can kind of upgrade. I'll have to kind of see how these guys play out on my bench to kind of make a move like that. But tight end, man, like it's tough. Like you've always said, you're getting
tough.
one of those top 4 or 5 guys. This year, I thought we had maybe a top 7 of solid guys. If you don't get one of those guys, you're kind of just
Shooting at
reaching.
the win.
Yeah, you're just kind of reaching for some sort of help. And like you said, you're getting a little bit of points here and there. But I like the way that offense looked on paper to kind of give him a shot. That's really it.
And the thing too is, I think I like personally. I thought as crowded as that Niners backfield has been last year, before that, it sounds like it's going to be a little crowded again. I like Mozart a lot, and I actually felt like the two best running backs in San Fran were Breda and Mozart. When I watched them play, they just seem to be the more explosive guys, the faster guys to get through the hole guys. So I like Mozart, and I like the fact that you kind of had the backup plan in Coleman as well. And if you were a little nervous about who's going to really get the touches, Tyler Boyd is on your bench. Tyler Boyd could very easily be in your lineup early. I know they have maybe a tough matchup early against Seattle, but I mean, there's no saying that Tyler Boyd isn't your flex until a Mozart or a Coleman kind of come up out of that mix there. So overall, I like your team. Like I said, I gave you a B plus. I think it was a really good draft. And what's going to be the grade you give yourself?
I gave myself a B plus as well. I don't want to sit there and say, I'm a full A team just because I know that I have that glaring need at tight end, and that to me, it can be addressed. But right now, as it stands, I'd say a B plus is about fair.
All right. So next up, we are going to go to the Goff father, Jay. And, as we go through this, one of the things I like doing about this league so far is I love keeping track of the history. And I don't know if you guys mentioned, but there is the history tab on the phone app now, which is awesome to see, just like the league champions, the records, and all that. Jay's now entering his 3rd year in the league. He's 8-18 in 2 years, so he's kind of peculiar here on whether or not he's going to put together a good season. I think this is Jay's best draft he's done. I really do. I think Matt Ryan's usually a fantasy stud. I would like to see more touchdowns from Matt Ryan this year. The 26 and 14 interceptions is a little bit worrisome. Is he a top 10 fantasy quarterback? We will see. I would like to think he still is. So I'd like to see a little bit more touchdowns from him this year. I'm not a big fan of James Conner, and I would argue that is one of his weaknesses. But here's the thing: who's really, in my eyes, taking touches away from him? I don't think Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, any of those guys are really totally vying for the running back position there. I think James Conner still has that pretty solidified. So in that sense, I can sneak away with that because he's got Barkley, Lockett, Stephon Diggs, George Kittle, and I know people are scared about Dobbins and Gus Edwards and that running back committee in Baltimore, and I know Ingram's getting up there in age, but he had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. They are going to give Ingram the rock until he cannot run the rock anymore. We guys got to remember, in New Orleans, he also was never a 3-down back there either. He's probably one of the more fresher 30-year-old running backs, if that's possible, in the league because he's never quite been that 20-25 touch guy anywhere he's been. So I know people are a little down on Ingram this year. I am not. I am not at all. I think Ingram's a really nice flex option, and on his bench, I think you got some upside in Darius Slayton, Jerry Jeudy. I think Noah Fant is a top 10 tight end this year in fantasy. Little weaknesses. Preston Williams. I'm not quite sure where Jordan Howard fits in, but I understand why he would be taken there if he is the starter. Overall, I think Jay had one of the best drafts in the league. I really, really liked it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I can't really disagree with you on most of it. The one thing I necessarily didn't, the one thing I'm worried about would be just kind of James Conner because first of all, I believe he had James Conner last year, didn't he? And he kind of wasn't.
Possibly, yeah. I'm not
He
100%
wasn't.
sure.
It was him or Rob, but we saw James Conner get injured quite a bit, and I just don't trust
Never been sold on him yet. Yeah.
the running back depth that he doesn't have because he has Howard, like you stated. Outside of that, it's Ingram. You can shift Ingram from your flex to your running backs position, but if Howard isn't somebody that's starting and he's not actually getting good tick, and Miami kind of goes a different direction, then you don't have anybody who's even going to play viable minutes at running back to sit there and play in a bye week, sit there and play in a week where someone is dinged up and can't play. Like you're gonna have to scramble, and scrambling for running backs is never a good thing. And scrambling for anybody is never a good thing, but you can get away with it in regards to quarterbacks most of the time, receivers for sure, and tight ends. That's a different story.
Right.
But running back, you really can't just pick off somebody off the waiver wire these days and just this guy's gonna be good. Okay, yeah, you can use all your points for 1 week, but like, you're going to handicap yourself at one point in time. So that's to me is a glaring issue there. But I do like Jay's team overall wise. Outside of that, he did draft
Right.
fairly well.
My thing is the only thing that worries me a little bit is Ingram did have a lot of touchdowns last year, and I think he will again. I don't know if he quite reaches 15 again, but I do think he'll be around double digits. Kittle, not a big touchdown threat. Diggs, not a big touchdown threat. Lockett, I think can be. I think he could get to 10 to 12 this year. I know Barkley missed some games, had 8 last year. I still think that he might be missing that big touchdown threat. I know it looks okay with Ingram in there, but Kittle looked at as a top tight end. I know a lot of people are riding that Kittle train, but at least for the next year, I know Kelsey's getting a little bit older and eventually the wheels may fall off. I still like Kelsey a little bit more than Kittle. So if he was able to have Kelsey over Kittle, I would have liked it even more. But at the same time, I think that's like thread needles there, right? I mean, to
Yeah,
compare the two, it's really close. But Kittle still for 85 catches, 1,000 yards last year, you would like to see him get in the end zone a little bit more. But overall, Jay's team, I really liked it this year. I think in year 3 he's going to make some noise, and I have an A minus for Jay's team. What do you have?
yep. I gave him an A. I didn't tackle on the minus there, but his team could have very well gotten an A plus had he had some more running back depth, in my opinion. But at the same time, too, he's got Noah Fant, he's got George Kittle. Let Fant, kind of show out for the first couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
I think he's got
But
some trade bait
yeah,
there.
he's
If
got trade
Slate
bait. He
if
really
Slayton
has, yeah,
steps up, I do think Fant could honestly possibly be a top 5, 6 tight end. So if Kittle's already nasty and someone's looking for some tight end help or receiver help, he could combine a Fant and a Slayton, this and that to improve. Who's to say Judy doesn't reach 1,000 yards this year as a rookie? You know what I mean? Like I think he's got some pieces where he could move too. So I like it.
for sure.
All right, so we had Jay's team. We both like this team a lot. Crimgate, you said you gave him an A. I gave him an A minus. Let's move on to Chad's team. All right. I went first on the last two. I'll let you roll with this one. What did you think of Chad's team?
Um, I mean, Chad's team to me, on paper, he's got some very good value guys, but at the same time, I don't think anything really stands out as, straight, fantasy producers, just because, I mean, it just doesn't, like, on paper, it doesn't really do it for me. Chad has Joe Mixon and Ronald Jones as his running backs currently. Now, Joe Mixon had a very down year last year. I don't know how, I mean, you can only really go up with him, but how far up will he kind of produce? Like, he had 1,137 yards last year, 5 touchdowns, 35 catches for 287 yards. Like, yeah, you can get more involved in the passing game with Joe Burrow now being your quarterback, so you kind of have that edge there. But outside of that, for Chad, again, running back depth is going to be, I'm going to beat it like a dead horse in regards to running back depth on teams. It's
Here's my
massive.
thing with how good his receivers are. Real quick, I don't mean to cut you off. With
Okay.
how good his receivers are, I know we don't really talk too much about like what was going on in the draft when we're grading teams. How much better would his team look right now? Obviously, you'd have to move some things around. And he obviously liked Mixon a little bit more than Jacobs or Jones, but instead of drafting Devontae Adams, what if he would have done a Jacobs and Jones first two picks. That would have, to me, made a
that
big difference. But who
honestly,
knows?
yeah, that like I agree. That to me, if you have Jacob, if you have Joe Mixon and
Yeah,
Jacob,
even Joe Mixon and Jacobs instead of Devontae,
yeah,
and then Gallup could have been his wide receiver too. He could have had DJ
well
Moore and
even
I
then,
don't know, or
why
Robinson.
his wide
You know?
receivers at that point, all you have to do is swap one of your running backs to one of the running backs that were selected around you. Your receivers here, maybe it wouldn't play out exactly the same, but your receivers here then look like Allen Robinson and DJ Moore. Those two guys are
That's
very
solid.
good. Very good
And then you could also have
fantasy receivers.
Aaron Jones or Josh Jacobs. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm
That's
looking
the thing.
at.
Obviously, Devontae, I love Devontae personally. I love Devontae. But that team doesn't have that second threat that allows Devontae to be as nasty as he should be. That's the biggest thing for me. So you're kind of not capping yourself, but you're relying on a team that doesn't have not even a wide receiver two to take the pressure off of Devontae. They don't have a great tight end. They have a good running back in Aaron Jones. So maybe Aaron Jones kind of steps it up and they kind of do something crazy with him, passing the ball more because he got a good amount of catches last year. It just, to me, it's very risky to get Devontae that high because of the lack of help for him.
Yeah, my thoughts on Chad's team is I think he I don't know, and this is where strategies differ, right? Because some people prefer going this that I traditionally love going running back early because it's not just there late. That's why if I'm him, and here's the thing, I don't hate his running backs. I actually am a little higher on Ronald Jones this year than most people. I know a lot of people are buying that Tampa Bay craze, and I am also. But I also think that they're not going to throw the ball as much this year as they did last year. I think they're going to want to save Brady. I think Godwin and Evans still going to have great years, but I actually think both of them go down in fantasy this year because they're not going to throw the ball as much. I think Ronald Jones is going to be close to an 1,000-yard running back this year. We'll see how much carries are shared there. And Mixon, as much as he kind of struggled last year, still did have 1,100 yards. So it's not like I hate his running backs, but it's just I don't know. I would have went a little bit of a different direction here. I think he's struggling at tight end mightily, and Hayden Hurst, as a lot of people are this year. And let's talk about it. And I think this was a problem last year as well, Krim. What happened to his bench? I think this is the worst bench in the league, and it's not close. I mean, Chase Edmonds, okay, maybe Kenyon Drake struggles in Arizona and isn't as good as we thought. Damian Harris had 12 yards last year. Bryce Love might be third or fourth on the depth chart. Devin Singletary should be taking over that job in Buffalo, but I do understand that pick, so I'm cool with that. Gallup, awesome. Jonnu Smith, okay, he's waiting for Hurst or Smith to come out. I think Gallup is the only person on his bench that is owned by it's Gallup at 99%, so he's owned by most of the league. Moss is at 40. Jonnu Smith is at 20. Edmonds, Harris, and Love are not even owned in 10% of leagues. So I'm not quite sure what he was thinking with his bench. What did you think of that?
I agree. Again, agree with most of it. I disagree with Jonnu Smith and you giving him that little thing just because if you look at his situation, he's on a team that loves to run. So he's involved in blocking, whatever. He's not blocked by Delaney Walker anymore. So he has more opportunities to catch the ball. I feel like he's going to be more efficient than you think. But at the same time, I think that Chad has two tight ends that kind of are going to put up the same type of numbers.
It's
So
gonna
you're
be a
not,
matchup where each week
yeah,
you're gonna have to pick the
yeah.
right one.
So that kind of, I think that where I said that you played it very safe with most of your picks, Chad kind of took risks with a lot of his picks, just to kind of if Chad gets them all right, and Joe Mixon comes out and proves us wrong and just has a great year. Ronald Jones steps it up in that Tampa Bay offense and has a great year. Those two guys are very good values. You know what you're getting out of Devontae Adams. DJ Moore last year was top 5 in yards. He's got Teddy now. So he's got a more reliable quarterback. I obviously don't know how well Teddy's going to play in a new system, and in a new system that he kind of had a hand in developing. So I'm going to say that it's going to work out better for DJ. Allen Robinson, I'm a big fan of. So like the guys he has starting are have the ability to be very good, but also Chad's kind of one running back ankle tweak gone for 4 weeks away from your team's kind of falling out of it quickly.
And my thing with Chad's team as well is, again, this is all opinion, right? So some of the names I don't like as much as other people. You're obviously a Panthers fan. You like DJ Moore. I just haven't been able to trust Carolina receivers as much lately, so I'm a little iffy on that one. Bears offense, we'll see how it does this year. Robinson was great last year. I'm hoping he is again. To me, we always hear that term ceiling and floor. I think he took a lot of guys that had that are going to be at a floor level this year. Okay, I know Jones might have a little bit of a better year. I think Mixon's going to be around the same. But DJ Moore, Robinson, as good as they were last year, I could also see them coming down a little bit, not even reaching 1,000 yards this year. Devontae Adams is also another guy that needs to have a bounce back year. So I think there's just a lot of question marks in terms of, do you really see any of these guys just breaking out? I don't. I think we've already seen a lot of these players' ceilings, and that's my problem. I don't think many of these players have another level. And like I said, I just don't think he has the depth on his bench. If he has any injuries, I think he's in a ton of trouble. So my grade for Chad was a D. What was yours?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I do think that Chad has a lot of floor guys. A lot of his guys have very high ceilings too. If they can kind of return to form that they played last year, and he picked up a lot of guys who kind of weren't really going into whole new systems. Devontae being the one guy that's going into a whole new system, not a whole new system, but they have a new coach. You're not going to really kind of have that same chemistry with that coach and the playbook and all that stuff. I didn't give Chad the D necessarily that you gave him, grade wise. I'll throw that out there before that sounds all suspect.
I didn't give. Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't give him the D either. You need to chill out on that
I
one.
gave him a C plus because I do like some pieces that he has, but I'm not gonna sit there and say his team is probably one of the worst in the league, but it very well can be the worst team in the league with simply one injury because the depth there is just not there.
And that's another thing too that a lot of people, draft strategy wise, some people draft benches as, safety blankets. Like, all right, this guy's going to get some touches. I need some backups. I need this guy could be, whatever. Chad, on the other hand, seems to draft for just high end potential guys. Like if a Kenyon Drake for some reason struggles mightily, maybe Chase Edmond plays. Maybe Bryce Love somehow becomes a starter in Washington. Maybe Zach Moss impresses enough where he's getting as many touches as Frank Gore was last year. But I don't know. It's just a lot of question marks. But we'll see. Chad did have, I'm pretty sure, a good year last year. Overall in the league, he's 35-32 in 5 years. Made the playoffs 3 times, but he's 0-3. So we'll see if he can get that monkey off his back like Dana did last year. Moving on to the next team, we got Chop Squad. We got Trey on deck here. This is your brother. Throughout the draft, you were mentioning early how you liked his draft. You did have some question marks about it though. So why don't you start this one off? What did you think of your brother Trey's draft?
I mean, normally he gets himself into situations where he's kind of not picking, like he's not reaching. To this year, he kind of started off very, very strongly, in my opinion, by grabbing Nick Chubb and doubling back and grabbing Josh Jacobs because a lot of the time he's picked well in regards to quarterbacks, but his running backs have always gave him such a big problem that they kind of kill his team. This year around, he went out and took Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, two viable guys at the beginning of at the beginning of your draft. You're not really going to take them out of your lineup unless they are playing, a top two defense, and you have some guys, kind of playing a bottom two defense, and you're just willing to swap them out. Likely, you're not going to. And even depth wise, like he has Kareem Hunt, so he's safe with the Browns running backs. He has the hot hand either way if they decide to kind of go that way. He's got Duke Johnson, who he loves absolutely, who, for all we know, could play a bigger role with David Johnson there if David Johnson struggles, although I love David Johnson this year. And Jonathan Taylor, who could be the number one running back in Indy within the first couple weeks just because they're pretty high on him, it seems, and he seems to be more of an involved guy with running the ball and catching the ball. So I like this draft a lot. He's very strong in all positions. I don't really see somewhere that he is weak at. That we would kind of think that injury here kind of cripples you. but at the same time, most of his guys are somewhat proven, but he's also kind of not shooting in the dark, but trying to get his upside guys by being rookies with Jonathan Taylor, Pittman, and a second year AJ Brown, who to me played well last year, but I mean, is he going to repeat that 8 touchdown performance? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, my take on Trey's team, I think he hit a home run in his first 2 picks with Chubb and Jacobs. That's the type of draft I usually like doing. Neither of them are going to be PPR guys. Some people are a little worried about Chubb and the Hunt, but Chubb still managed to get his even when Hunt was on the field last year. Um, it's just going to be one of those things where they're both not PPR guys. They're both going to do well, but I'll be honest. I think Trey dropped the ball late after that. I think what is Brandon Cooks now? He's got all the potential in the world, but this is another team. Subpar year last year. AJ Brown, 1,000 yards last year on 50 catches. This is a PPR league. 50 catches is not a lot. Is he going to be that home run threat again? Getting 1,000 yards on that's almost 20 yards a catch. That's a home run threat. Can AJ Brown turn into an 80, 85 reception receiver? I don't know. As of right now, I mean, obviously it could change. He could throw Kareem Hunt in there or whatever. But if he does that, then he's starting both Cleveland running backs. He's got 2 tight ends starting, Engram and Cook. Now, Cook, again, kind of a home run threat, only 43 catches last year, but he did have 700 yards and 9 touchdowns. And I feel like every year we're waiting for Evan Engram to just become this like top tier tight end, and he's just not. I don't know what it is with Evan Engram. I've always kind of been high on him myself, but he's been in the league 3 years now. And through 3 years, his average is about 600 yards a year and about 4 touchdowns. That's about what he averages 3 years in the league. And I know he was hurt last year and he got off to a really good start, but to me, it's one of those things like, how much longer are we going to wait for him to develop into that top tight end? So that's kind of a question mark for me. Cooks is a question mark for me. I do like the pairing of Watson and Cooks. I do think Cooks is going to come back up to earth a little bit this year, but as your wide receiver one, I don't know. I think this is the year Larry Fitzgerald really starts falling off a bit. Do I think he gets 1,000 yards? No. But he had 800 yards last year, 75 catches. I think he's going to come back down a little bit to about 60 catches, 600 yards. I think with Isabella there, with Kirk there, with Hopkins there, I think this is the year Fitzgerald kind of settles back more into not a mentorship role, but he's going to kind of let this thing ride and develop. I don't think Fitzgerald is going to be a viable starting option this year. I do like Taylor and Pittman, the rookies, but again, same team. That might be a flex option week in and week out, and then you're having to decide which one you want to start. So I really love those first 2 picks in Chubb and Jacobs. I do, but the rest of the draft, I think he really, really dropped the ball after a good start, and I'm actually going to give him overall as a grade. I'm going to give him a C minus. What's your grade on him?
Yeah, I feel completely different. I gave his team an A just because
Whoa!
I'm looking at it as you're slotting Jonathan Taylor in as your flex. That's how I'm looking at it. He's going to obviously change that. But these guys, you have your first year guys and your running backs. The Deshaun Cooks tandem there, I really like. I'm pretty high on Brandon Cooks and obviously Deshaun. And AJ Brown, he's the biggest question mark to me. But like you said, last year he was a home run guy. Obviously, teams are kind of going to key in on the whole running game of Tennessee. Is Ryan Tannehill really that great? We're going to find out very, very quickly. But on paper, as I look at it, I like his team clearly much more than you do.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I loved his first 2 picks, and I'm not saying Deshaun Watson's even gonna have a down year by any means, but I mean, he just lost to me the second best receiver in the league. I mean, I know you add Cooks in that, but like, I'm not even saying Watson can't progress a little bit, but losing Hopkins has to be huge. So I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. He's got a lot of Texans. I know he's got Duke Johnson, so maybe he can throw that in there as a flex if they think they're going to throw the ball a lot. But again, hit home run the first 2 picks. We'll see what kind of role Kareem Hunt plays, but overall, I think he dropped the ball after that. So that's our big very first differentiation. But you seem to always like your brother's team, so ride with it, roll with it. You give him an A, I gave him a C minus, and we move on to the last team in the division, which is Pistol Pete's platoon. I'll start off here. I think Peter overall did a pretty solid job drafting. I think this is one of the more balanced teams in the league, and I think he has one of the best benches in the league as well. I think overall, I'm not. Here's the thing: people are riding the Sanders train this year, and I do think he's going to do well this year. I do think he's probably going to reach 1,000 yards. Um, I just don't feel comfortable as a first round pick. But at the same breath, Aaron Jones, who in a lot of mocks that I was in was a first round pick, you can almost interchange those. That Jones was his first and Sanders was his second. Um, and Jones was a touchdown machine last year. Can you really count on seeing 16 touchdowns for running back and saying he's going to do that again? That's tough. That is tough, but Aaron Jones might do it. But I'm riding the Brady train. I think he's going to do fine this year with those weapons. Jones and Sanders is a decent running back combo. Again, I'm not super high on Sanders as some are this year, but I do like Cooper. I like McLaurin. I think Haskins is a big deal in McLaurin's development, but even with how inaccurate Haskins was last year, McLaurin flashed some promise last year, so I liked him a lot. Darren Waller, how about that? I mean, here's the thing. If I don't want to say he's a question mark at all because of how well he did last year, but Darren Waller was an absolute stud. 90 catches, 1,100 yards. You would assume with that much action, he would score more than 3 touchdowns. So I expect that to jump up a little bit. And I know Melvin Gordon might be in a little bit of a committee this year, this and that, but he should get those red zone carries. He should get in the end zone. And honestly, as a flex, I like Melvin Gordon. I think a lot of teams might have had him as their RB2 for fantasy and been okay with it. With Peter having him in as his flex, I'm cool with that. Latavius Murray, going to get some action. The Saints always love running multiple running backs. Ayuk and that San Francisco core should get a lot of playing time because they've lost some pieces there as well. You of course have Edelman. I love his bench. Edelman, Marvin Jones, Sterling Shepard, and Golden Tate. I think at least one or two of those are going to have 1,000-yard years this year for sure. I think you can use that as trade bait if he ends up needing something due to injury. I think balance wise, Peter is one of the most balanced teams in the league. I think he's got it all the way top to bottom. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say so. I like you said, I don't really like the selection of Miles Sanders in the first round, but I mean, like you said, you can kind of swap those guys, and then you're okay with it. But just to me, where his mind was at that point was no, I'm not gonna question it, but he saw something that we must not have with Sanders, which is fine. I understand that. But yeah, his team is very balanced. To me, Darren Waller is a big not question mark because obviously we saw what he did last year, but I don't know if he gets those same numbers just because well, they brought in Henry Ruggs. Like, are you really going to bring in a hot shot wide receiver in the first round and not kind of try to feed him every chance you get? Like, you're kind of trying to build your image around this guy, the speedster. And Waller kind of came in at a situation where those receivers and Renfro and Tyrell Williams weren't really cutting it. But now that you have a very big mouth to feed in Ruggs, you have Renfro still there doing his job. You have Waller, you have Josh Jacobs still taking, he's still catching the ball decently well. Like, is he going to repeat that 90 catch season? Probably not. He didn't really score a lot of touchdowns last year. It was mainly yards and just catches. So he could be in for a down year. But all in all, yeah, I don't like the only kind of thing I can look at is Peter's running back depth again, which I can say that for any team really. If you don't have 5 solid running backs, which no team really does, you're not really gonna have the flexibility of kind of throwing guys everywhere. But I would agree. I do like Peter's team. It is very balanced, but is it going to kind of be enough to work every week? I wouldn't say so, just because some of these guys, like a McLaurin, like they're going to throw the ball a lot, yes, just because they'll be down in games. But how well is that Washington line going to hold up with Haskins? How well is Haskins going to hold up for the year in regards to just playing well? So there's some question marks, but I do agree where I think Peter's team is, one guy struggles, you have another guy to kind of fit in there
Right.
with the same amount of upside and kind of same floor. So
And
they're interchangeable for sure.
And that's why I think having good benches is so important. And I know sometimes it's hard to predict, right? It's like a bullpen in baseball. Your bench, you could end up dropping 3 dudes after week 1 because they just weren't getting the ticks you thought they were going to get. They weren't something, right? But why I like a good bench in fantasy is because when you look at a team like Chad's, where you can look at some of the starters and go, okay, that's not bad. But if any of them go down, if any of them struggle mightily, where are you going to pull from? Where are you going to pull from to get another guy? And that's why I like Peter's team because, okay, maybe Melvin Gordon isn't getting the touches he wanted. Maybe Lindsey's getting more than he thought. All right, let me put someone else in at the flex, or let me trade a Shepard combo, a Shepard and a Jones, or an Edelman and a Golden Tate, or something like that. And I think he's got that capital basically to make a move if need be and kind of bolster a position, and that's why I like it. So overall, I'm giving Peter an A. I think he had one of the best drafts in the league. What are you giving him?
There are some obviously room for improvement as every team has. I was just on the outside of that. I gave Peter a B plus.
All right. So with that being said, we're done with Division One. We'll go back and pick our playoff teams for that one at the end when we wrap up everybody's. Let's move to Division Two here, Crim. Let's go to our buddy Dave's team. Play that guitar to a W, which I had to ask what the hell that meant. Apparently, it's Austin Eckler's celebration that he does when he scores. I guess we were supposed to know that. So he's already off to a bad start in terms of team name, Crim. So without factoring that in, because if we factored that in, he'd be at a D. What do you think of his team?
I'm gonna factor the name in a little bit, and I'm also gonna factor in the fact that he continues to pick Juju Smith-Schuster, complain about him all year long, and then follow up next year by taking him again. All in all, Dave's team and me, it's not bad. It's not fantastic. I don't really see a whole lot that I love. I don't see a whole lot that I very much dislike either. I do like his receiving core, and by core I mean the two players out of the five he has that are actually going to do something in Julio and Ty. I think those guys are really primed for big seasons just because there's not a lot of interchange with those teams. Like Ty got a new quarterback, yes, a better quarterback, a kind of quarterback that complements him more in regards to kind of beating the defense downfield, getting him into space. Like I feel like Ty is the guy you want in your wide receiver 2 slot. Juju kind of should be moving into that flex slot because that's how he's been performing the last season or so. But running back wise for me, Dave took a couple flyers. I mean, you've got Eckler. That's a given. You're a Chargers guy. You've got Eckler. As a PPR running back, he's one of the best you'll get. So I can't really knock that. But to rely on your RB2 to be Todd Gurley, and he's had issues with his knee, and he's in a new offense, and we don't know kind of how much he'll work, it's hard to sit there every week and just throw Gurley in there. You don't really have another option. I mean, you have Cam Akers who likely takes the job, yes. But how much of the job does he actually receive? He can be starting games and get 40% of the carries for all we know because they have Darrell Henderson, they have Malcolm Brown still. Like, they have guys that they have used before. So those guys have the playbook, right? And again, and outside of that, you have Joshua Kelly, who's likely not going to get tick. You have him because he's going to be your handicap. And then you have Lindsey, who, again, we don't know he's in the committee, so it's kind of hard to guess what he's going to do.
Yeah, and my thing about Dave's team this year is it's tough. I still think Gurley's a viable fantasy option, and the main reason he was viable fantasy-wise last year was all because of his touchdowns. And I don't know if he gets 12 touchdowns this year. I don't. And I'm not quite sure. Based on what I saw last year, he just looked like a different player. And I actually went into last year going, you know what? I might take Gurley early because people are thinking that he is a different player. And he was. I mean, I don't care what people say. Watching Gurley last year, he was different. He didn't have the explosiveness. He didn't have that top running back type ability that he had just a year prior. I mean, it's not that long ago where Gurley was unquestionably the best running back in the league. And it's just, I don't know. I just don't know if he gets to 12 touchdowns this year. So I'm a little worried about that. The other one I'm worried on a little bit, and I still think he's going to be a top 10 fantasy back this year without a doubt, is Eckler. Simply because I don't think just because Melvin Gordon's gone, don't automatically assume Eckler's going to get 25 touches a game. He's never been a guy that gets 20 carries a game. He's going to get a lot of catches. He's going to be good in PPR formats. I still think he finishes top 10 running back, but we'll see rushing wise. So immediately, I don't think either of his starting running backs gets to 1,000 yards rushing this year. No. Off bat. I don't think either of them do. And then you got the running back wide receiver on the same team in Gurley and Jones. Jones has never been a touchdown threat, ever. He just never can get 10 touchdowns, but again, it's Julio. He's going to be fine. He's got a lot, and I think he mentioned this during the draft, Crim. He's got a lot of prove-it guys this year, okay? He's got Todd Gurley, you could argue, is a prove-it guy. Juju Smith-Schuster is 100% a prove-it guy. 500 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. I understand there was quarterback issues in Pittsburgh last year, but I've seen many, many great receivers have phenomenal seasons with bad quarterback play. So I love Juju Smith-Schuster as a player, but I'm extremely curious how he does this year. I mean, is it true that Antonio Brown leaving the team had that much of an impact on Juju's play? Because again, I've seen DeAndre Hopkins play with Matt Schaub and Ryan Mallett and still have 1,200 yards. So I don't know what was up with that last year. That scares me. T.Y. Hilton is another prove-it guy, has had injury concerns a lot of time, not really reliable, gets hurt a lot. This is a guy that I think last year didn't even have one game over 100 yards. So I know you're a big T.Y. fan. You've always been a fan of his. Is he due for a comeback, or are his best years behind him? The one thing I do like about Dave's team, again, is I do like his bench. I think N'Keal Harry should get more time this year in New England. I think Philip Lindsay, there's no way they abandon Philip Lindsay, and I've been saying that from day one. Yes, they signed Gordon. Yes, Gordon's going to get those goal line carries. Philip Lindsay was an 1,000-yard running back last year. This is a guy that averages 5 yards a carry. I've always been a huge fan of Philip Lindsay, and I see no reason why he shouldn't even be a viable option at the flex this year. Josh O'Kelly to handcuff Eckler because, again, even though Melvin Gordon's gone, I still think there's going to be a little bit of a committee there in LA, so I like that. And as you mentioned, Cam Akers, if he comes up and is the starter, that might alleviate some of my concerns about Dave's team. I like Dave's team. I don't love it. I think there's a few prove it guys this year that I'm not sure are going to prove it. So I like his team. I think there's a lot of star power there, but I think it's still missing a couple things. But overall, I like the draft. I will give it a B, but there's a little feeling with it. What's your thought? What's your
Yeah,
grade on it?
you liked it a little bit more than I did. I think one saving grace for Dave's team is Austin Hooper at tight end. He kind of got himself one of those unsung heroes because Hooper was very good last year. Is it a situation where he can kind of not get lost in the offense, but in a good way hide behind somebody like Landry and Odell and in front of Nick Chubb, like where he kind of isn't being keyed in on and have a pretty productive season. He had a great season last year, I would say, tight end wise. Scoring 6 TDs, having 75 grabs is pretty solid. If you can do it again, you don't really kind of have to worry about that. But I gave Dave a B minus just because I'm worried about his running backs, man. Like
Right.
they
I
are
don't think
fine.
either of them hit 1,000 yards this year. I don't
No, like
personally.
if you look at
Unless
Eckler,
Gurley bounces back and is somehow more healthy this year. To me, I mean, would you agree? Did it just seem? Was he recovering from his injury last year? To me, it honestly seemed like Krim. He aged 5 years. It just
yeah,
did. He just
I
didn't
mean,
seem
and
to have it.
that's arthritis, man. Like that's how it works. So I don't think he gets rejuvenated here. I don't think I'm fine with Todd Gurley being your running back too because of the touchdowns. But if he's not getting those, he is not
Yeah.
going to help you that
And
much.
I don't see him getting 12 this year.
No,
I personally don't.
no.
But who knows? Like I said, I think there was moments he probably could have went different directions in the draft, and I would have liked his team more. But there are certain aspects of his team I like a lot, so I'll give it a B. I'm not thrilled with it, but he's got some options on the bench that can improve that as well. So overall, you gave him a B minus. I gave him a B. Moving on to the next team, our other buddy Dana, the Brady Bunch, kind of hopping in and out of the draft for the most part here. Um, man, I don't know. This is an interesting team because I think when you look at his pass catchers, Beckham, Thomas, Andrews, and Allen, I think you arguably have one of the top pass catching cores in the league right there. I think Beckham gets more touchdowns this year. I think he gets more yards this year. I think we see a little bit more of the Odell Beckham Jr. in New York this year. I think we 85 catches, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think is reasonable for him. Michael Thomas is Michael Thomas. He's the best receiver in the league. Mark Andrews, Baltimore doesn't throw the ball a lot. I love Mark Andrews. I love me some Ravens. I'm a little worried, does he get the same amount of touchdowns this year? But overall, Andrews should still be in that top 5 to 7 tight end range. So I'm not too worried there. Keenan Allen, here's the thing with Keenan Allen. I love him in the flex there, especially considering where he went in drafts in previous years. Does he get 104 catches and 1,200 yards if Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback? Even if Herbert's the quarterback? Phillip Rivers slang. As much as he threw picks, he will throw 4,000 plus yards, right? So does Keenan, maybe with them taking a more running approach, maybe them taking a more safe approach, does he reach those numbers this year? I don't know, but I do like him in the flex. The bench, again, I'm not sure what the bench is here. Justin Jefferson, interesting. Deontay Johnson could be one of those guys that comes out. I think it's just a matter of time before Emmanuel Sanders' legs falls off. He's getting up there in age, but we'll see how he does in that high-powered Miami offense. I don't. I'm not a fan of the bench. I'm not a huge fan of the running backs. I am not riding the Kenyon Drake train this year. I'm just not. I know he stepped up last year, came on the scene, and lit the world on fire. I personally am not riding that train. And again, David Montgomery, I don't know what the Bears are going to do play calling wise. He's never going to be a pass catching threat of the backfield. I think, again, Montgomery's a okay RB2, low end, but more of a flex guy. So question mark at running backs. Great pass catchers, but to me, awful bench. I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah. To me, Dana's team, the bench is what kind of eats into his grade. I like Kenyon Drake. I'm a fan of Kenyon Drake. I think that the offense in front of Kenyon Drake gives him the ability to be more consistent because he came in at the end of the year. He scored 6 touchdowns in 2 games. That's the bulk of your points right there. So obviously you're riding that wave with Kenyon Drake. If he can, and the offense in front of him got better, so I'm going to assume that he's going to become more consistent. Not necessarily better, but more consistent for sure. His upside is in regards to his catching because he had 50 grabs last year, so I'm going to hope that he gets the same amount of fucking touches. Like with the Kyler having more targets, it kind of might buy into that, but outside of that, receivers, I would say I like my receivers a lot. I like Dana's receivers probably better just because he's got an extra, threat in Mark Andrews.
Especially if Beckham comes back to where he is. Pairing Beckham and Thomas, those are 2 guys that not long ago would have both been low first-round picks, very early second rounds, and he has both of them on the same team. Oh, Keenan Allen, who's been a second, third-round pick the last couple of years, is also on his team. So you got to love it, right? You got to like that.
Got it. And I like Josh Allen. I don't know if he repeats what he did last year just because he scored 9 TDs on the ground, so I don't think that he kind of does that again. I think they're going to give more of the – he broke off bigger runs to score, but on the goal line, they're going to end up giving it to Singletary and going to leave it with Zach Moss more often than not. And even Dana himself during the draft didn't – I don't know if he auto-drafted Josh Allen or what, but – he went back and got Daniel
Jones. He had
a
chance to get Breeze late. And again, like you said, I don't know about the auto picking stuff. And do I think Josh Allen's a viable fantasy option this year? I do because of his running ability. He's going to get in the end zone. Again, does he get 9 rushing touchdowns? I don't know. He's never been much for throwing for a lot of yards either. But if you could have told, I think he got Allen in around 7 or 8, and I think Breeze went in around 9. So imagine pairing Breeze and Thomas and possibly adding a different option there, a different bench piece, adding something on something. But he could have had Breeze later, and that was what it was a little surprising.
Yeah. Now, in regards to Dana's bench, his bench is probably, honestly, the best bench I've seen, only because it has JJ and nothing else. That's why it makes the best bench in the league.
Yeah, you like him.
In all seriousness, the bench concerns me just like it concerns you. If you look at the notes on Dana's running backs, Kenyon Drake had just shed his walking boot, so he's not 100%. David Montgomery, I believe Thursday, was ruled out 2 to 4 weeks, so he may miss the first week, maybe even the second week of the season. Who do you have that you can put in there at running back? You have Raquel Armstead, and that is it. If Montgomery misses game 1 or game 2, maybe even just game 1, you have to now scour the waiver wire to grab a random running back that you need to hope plays.
Yeah. No, it's bad. And another thing to add on to it too is I really think, I don't know, man. I know it's Michael Thomas and then everything else is up for grabs, but Jared Cook had a better year last year than Emmanuel. I don't know. It's just, I don't know about Emmanuel Sanders at 34 years old, being the team's number 2 receiver. Last year was the least amount of targets he got per game since he was on the Steelers in 2012. And he's 34 now. And I know the Saints offense is a little bit more high-powered, but between Kamara catching passes, Cook catching passes, I've never been a huge Sanders fan, and for him, again, you could argue that it's one of his better bench options, but yikes! I think Dana's bench is ugh. I don't know.
Yeah, I just the lack of running backs, man. I mean, in any fantasy league, it's tough to kind of.
It's a lack of running backs, and his running backs aren't that great in my eyes to begin with, right?
At the
I mean,
same time, though, can he shed somebody like Odell or Keenan to grab a higher tier running back
right.
and slot the other guy in wide receiver 2 and kind of use what he has on the bench,
That's the direction I think he needs
whatever?
to go.
Yes,
I
he can, but yeah,
I
it's
think that's I think within the first 2-3 weeks, Beckham or Thomas will be on the block. Thomas, if he really wants to make a big splash, because even Beckham and Keenan Allen isn't a bad
yeah,
combo at receiver. But if Beckham shows up these first few weeks, 100 yards a game, 1 touchdown, he might try to sell high on Odell Beckham and get a running back. But running backs are a premium, and even if you're offering a good receiver, some people make it tough to pry running backs from. That's why I'd rather just get him in the draft and try to trade for him. But overall, I gave Dana a C- on his draft. What did you give him?
yep. I gave him a C- as well. It's tough to give a team a, a D grade when they have Michael Thomas on there, and like the receiving core is very stout. But it's just above for me right there. Like it's that's what keeps it afloat, and that's what's going to be kind of you're dying on that hill if you're receiving if your receivers are good every week, you can win games. If they kind of are mediocre or bad, you're going to die on that hill. So that's kind of how the grading worked out too.
Yeah, without a doubt, no doubt about it. So moving on, we both gave Dana a C-. Let's move on to the next team, to Khalil a Mockingbird. I like it. Tyler is going to be here entering year 2. I've been kind of neglecting to give the records here so far throughout. Kind of been dabbling them in here and there. He was a first-year team last year. Went 6-7, showed up a little bit, not too bad. And that's kind of when it goes back talking about Peter's team. You know, he's had two really bad years, one good year. Dana has one of the best winning percentages in the league, and he's only made the playoffs once. He's 40-27 in league history, and he's only made the playoffs once. So kind of crazy there. Dave, on the other hand, I know we just talked about Dave's team not too long ago. 38-29. He's made the playoffs 4 out of 5 years. The first 4 years, never won a playoff game. So a lot of storylines to look at this year when it comes to that. But let's talk about Tyler's team here. First glance, looking at it, I think he's got arguably QB1 or QB2 in fantasy. He's got running back 1 in fantasy. He's got another running back that's a 1,200-yard guy. He's got a receiver that's a 1,000-yard guy. I think Metcalf's arrow moves up this year. I think he gets over 1,000. I know I'm not as high on Gronk as some people are, but I still think as long as he's healthy, Gronk should, if he's healthy, Crim, in that offense, still be a top 10 tight end. I mean, should. I mean, it's not like the guy's old. He should be. And you could argue he could be a top 5. And CeeDee Lamb in that offense, I know they got Gallup and stuff there. I like that as well. I really, and we'll get to the bench in a second here, where you also have an 1,000-yard running back. You have Christian Kirk, who in that offense could, if that's high flying, those numbers could raise this year. You're an Anthony Miller fan. He has Hunter Henry on his bench, who I think would be starting on a lot of fantasy teams. So he might get some calls on Hunter Henry or Rob Gronkowski down the road. I think Tyler did a damn good job drafting this year. Thoughts?
Yeah, Tyler did a pretty solid job, I'd say. I have questions in regards to drafting Joe Burrow late, just because that could have been another bench piece. Like you
Especially
could,
when you have Mahomes.
yeah,
Do you need to pick on another Q?
they're not
You
really
know what I
gonna
mean?
move. Yeah, once his week by week comes up, given he stays healthy all
Yeah.
year long, you're not
You
gonna
pick up
really.
a quarterback, you drop him. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you have Patrick Mahomes on your team, I don't see much of a reason for another guy, unless for some reason he thinks Burrow's going to go off and someone desperately needs a quarterback. But usually people, again, don't give up a ton for
yeah,
quarterbacks because there's plenty out there, right? So I don't know. Continue though.
yeah. Like that to me, that could have been another running back. Your depth there is not great. I mean, you have McCaffrey, stud, the best running back in the league. No, no, hands down. Not gonna bench him ever. Chris Carson to me, he's hit or miss. He's one of those guys who seems to get hurt quite a bit. He's also one of those guys who I mentioned in the live show that team always seems to have Chris Carson and one or two more viable backs that they always work in. somehow, some way, because it seems to me every year the Seahawks have 2, 3 running backs who are fantasy viable just because they get carries
Right.
and they
They
split them.
run the ball a lot.
Yeah.
And the scary thing is I've always been a fan of Chris Carson. I know he's had fumbling issues and there's always a couple times throughout the year, I'm sure you've noticed, where his job's on the line. His job's on the line. This is a guy that ran for 1,200 yards last year. I'm not quite sure how his job's on the line, but when they add a Carlos Hyde, Rashad Penny, let's not forget, was a pretty high draft choice for Seattle. So are they really just going to give up on him? They added Hyde, they added Penny, they have second year player Travis Homer. Also, they did draft a running back in the fourth round. So is there any bit of you that is worried about Chris Carson this year?
No, I think I think he's pretty secure in regards to his role. Penny's always is banged up currently, and Hyde always seems to find his way to somehow, some way, take some significant carries away. But in regards to Carson being the starter for the foreseeable future, at least this season, it's pretty good. But again, like you have those 2 guys. You have Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack, very viable. Obviously, might not get the 1,000 yards you think because he has Jonathan Taylor to kind of compliment him
Right.
or take over for him or split or
Matchup
whatever.
guy, I think, this year.
Yeah, but Jamal Williams is your fourth running back. He's kind of, I think, I don't know how the Packers will work,
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
but like, it gets a situation where you're trying to take someone in a situation that Carson's in and hope that guy gets the carries behind Aaron Jones and behind A.J. Dillon. I don't think they drafted him for no reason. So you're kind of taking a shot there, sure. But the Burrow pick, man, you could have taken another running back and just taken a shot at somebody. That didn't need to happen. If you have a top tier quarterback and you're not going to slot out, there's really no point in taking him. Outside of that, though, I think his team is pretty balanced. I like it. His receivers don't really scream out any sort of upgrade that's needed. They don't really show me that they're going to be fantastic, but you have 2 high target guys in Woods and Metcalf, so I can't complain about that. Your bench guys can get involved in the offense for sure. Anthony Miller last year got targeted a hell of a lot. He just wasn't able to kind of make the most of all of that. We'll
Right.
see if kind of Foles comes in and starts and does more for him, or Trubisky wins the job over and does more
And
for him. Who knows? But
yeah, and theoretically, here's the way I look at his team. He's got 3 1,000-yard receivers starting, right? McCaffrey, Woods, and Metcalf. I mean, theoretically, let's just say that. Metcalf was at 900 yards last year. Personally, I like Metcalf a lot. I think that jumps a little bit, okay? So theoretically, he's got 3 1,000-yard receivers. He's also got 3 1,000-yard running backs. Again, you could knock Mac down with Jonathan Taylor going in there, but 3 1,000-yard running backs, 3 1,000-yard receivers, and you probably have QB1 or QB2 in fantasy this year. I like his team. I do like his team. Obviously, there's a little bit of worry. Does Carson get the same load? Metcalf, obviously, they're the same team, so you're kind of digging into each other right there. How good are the Rams going to be this year in Woods? But he does have Gronk. He does have Lamb as kind of high, maybe higher ceiling guys. Overall, I like Tyler's team quite a bit this year. Last year was 6-7. I think he improves on that quite a bit. I gave Tyler an A-. What did you give him?
I didn't give him an A-. I do like his team. He's kind of got one of those set it and forget it teams to where like those guys are good enough to where you're not really gonna kind of move them around in regards to matchups. Maybe your flex, which if that's your worst kind of position where you're gonna have to interchange guys, you have solid options in Mac, CD, Kirk, Miller, and Hunter Henry, all viable. I do like his team. I don't think it's kind of blowing me out of the water, but you have Mahomes, you have McCaffrey. Any team that has those 2 guys, I can't really just push to the wayside. So I gave Tyler a B+.
All right, so we both like this team quite a bit. Let's move on to the next team, Rob. Fear boners. And Rob, again, the other champion league, he's won twice. He was in there talking with us while he was drafting. Rob's team's interesting to me. I think Rob's team has a lot of players that I like. I wonder if he could have got him at different spots. He's got a couple home run threats as well. My thing with Rob is Russell Wilson, obviously top fantasy option, nice. Dalvin Cook, top fantasy option, nice. A little bit of injury concerns. And with those injury concerns, he does not have a viable bench piece. He's got a hell of a lot of receivers. Maybe a little too many receivers. So if there is injury concerns, oh, by the way, Le'Veon missed some games last year. He is strapped at running back. I know those projections, that draft recap gave him 13-0, but if he has one injury at running back, that all of a sudden hurts him massively. But here's the thing. I think he reached on Le'Veon based on where he was going in mock drafts, but it's possible that other people were thinking of getting him too. So I don't hate him getting Le'Veon in the second round, especially given his name. Do I think Le'Veon improves on his year this off last year? I do. I do think Le'Veon gets 1,000 yards rushing this year. I think he gets over 500 yards receiving. He needs to get in the end zone more though. He needs to get in the end zone more than 4 times. Dalvin Cook needs to stay healthy. I love me some Adam Thielen, Crim. I know you do too. I know you like some Vikings, but I'm not sure on him. I mean, 30 catches, 400 yards last year. He was banged up a lot, but Diggs is now gone. He is entrenched in as that number one. He's not young. I worry. Devontae Parker burst onto the scene last year. Is there any chance of a sophomore slump from him in terms of that? Kelsey, great, awesome. He does have James White in case one of those running backs go down, but White's not really a running back, and I wonder what type of production he has with a completely new quarterback there as well. Will Cam Newton check down as much as Brady? So there's things I really like about this team on paper. Like just hearing these names: Wilson, Bell, Cook, Kelsey. You're thinking, yeah, that's good. But at the same time, there are some question marks on how well they're going to perform this year. What's your thoughts on Rob's team?
Yeah. Like you said, those guys, those 4 guys you mentioned, Wilson, Bell, Cook, Kelsey, sound good. But you cannot win a fantasy week with 4 people. So it kind of breaks down to the other guys that you have. To me, Thielen, I love Thielen. I'm a big Thielen guy. But like you said, you lose Diggs. Thielen to me was never kind of a guy you can take over a wide receiver core. He was a very, 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 very good complement to another wide receiver. That's kind of that was kind of his niche. He needed that guy to take the top off, which was Diggs, and he was so crafty. Underneath, he's a killer. Grab that, bang, you create space for yourself, and you're gaining yards after the catch because that's what he does. Now, can Justin Jefferson do that for you? Yes, but it's a rookie in a year that's very, very different than most. So I'm not going to sit there and rely on a Thielen to be able to produce the same way he did last year. Like you said, he was banged up. Hopefully he comes back, full strength this year. But I just don't think that we're going to get the Thielen of 2018. He doesn't have that in him right now just because there's so much changing. So to rely on that offense entirely, I feel like you're fine with Cook for sure. Thielen, you're kind of going to have to hope that he kind of not breaks out because you know what he can do, just gets back into form. And I don't really see that happening myself.
Yeah, and the thing is too, as I mentioned his bench, and I think there is a lot of good names there. Claypool, I think, is going to be in the lineup a lot this year. Crowder, Fuller's a home run threat. Was injured last year. Up until his injury, was doing really well. Debo, going to be good. Sammy Watkins in Kansas City, as long as he's on the field, we'll see what his role is going to be good. He's got a lot of pieces there, but and I know he might have thought I got Bell and Cook, I don't need running backs, but both of them have been banged up a bit in the past,
Yeah.
and that's my worry. I think Rob, on paper, if everything goes according to plan, his team will do fine.
Yeah.
But if an injury or two props up, I think he's going to have some really big question marks.
Yeah.
But overall, I gave Rob an A-. I like his team, but any little bang up is going to be trouble. What did you give him?
All right. Well, remember that grading we did a couple teams ago where somebody was super high on the team, somebody wasn't, and they went by the name of Trey Chops?
Yeah.
This is kind of the Trey Chops of Division 2 because I gave Rob a C-.
Okay.
I like Rob's team at first glance. But like you said, he's one injury away from the running back position being crippled and having to move, likely Travis Kelce, who is a very viable piece in the fantasy game, just to replace that person. And that can just deconstruct your team very quickly.
Yeah, and I also worry too. I do worry a little bit about his receivers, right? Because Thielen, again, we don't know about, and Devontae Parker, as good of a season as Devontae Parker had last year, and maybe a lot of people believe in him. I mean, he had a terrific year last year.
Yeah.
That could that have been a fluke? I mean, it could have.
You got to look at too the running backs, man. They didn't have a running back last year. Now they have 2. They're going to run the ball more.
That could be a rookie, and it could be a rookie quarterback, right? So,
and if you put 2 in there, you're not going to let them go sling. You're going to ease them into it. You're the Dolphins. You're not going to win the division. this year. So you're going to get him acclimated, get the guys acclimated. And the thing with Tua too is they don't think about this a lot. If you're Devontae Parker, you're used to running with Fitzpatrick. You're running your post from left to right. With Tua, you're running your posts from right to left. That change in general, a receiver can run wherever on the field, but if you're running 80% of your routes left to right, and now the whole playbook is swapped, it's not something you can just easily make and just move on as nothing happened. Like, that's going to change you somewhat.
Yeah, for sure. So me and you are pretty different on him. I gave him an A minus. You gave him a C minus, right?
Correct.
All right, moving on to the last two teams. We got our newcomer in this year. Justin Thinger, J Thing, Dub Bear Necessities. He is going to be the new one this year, taking over for Victoria. His team, on paper, Rodgers, Fournette, Kamara, Evans. Top four guys sound pretty solid. You'd like Fournette to get in the end zone a little bit more. You'd also like Kamara to actually, get a lot of carries. Ridley, I do like him. I think he was going a little bit earlier than I would have liked. Higbee was pretty good last year. I think AJ Green bounces back this year in that offense. Again, a lot of receivers on that bench. So one running back injury, you're in trouble. A lot of receivers on the bench. Some good viable receivers. I don't know if there's many of them in there though that I'm comfortable starting in the flex. Jeffrey maybe if he's healthy. Samuel maybe on a matchup. Marquise Brown, as much as again as I like the Ravens, they don't throw the ball a lot. The only pass catcher I'm really trusting on the Ravens this year is Mark Andrews. So as much as he has decent receivers on his bench, I don't really see any plug and play guys that you have there. So I do like his lineup. I do. But I think he's got a lot of very average bench players. It's not a bad bench. It's not bad, but a lot of average ones. And I think he's going to struggle if he needs to find a trade, package a couple guys together. I think he's going to struggle finding that. But overall, lineup wise, starting lineup, I actually like it quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like it's a ongoing trend with a lot of these teams this year. How kind of some of us stayed, I wouldn't say traditional, but we kind of are stuck in our ways to where we're drafting running backs hefty, and it kind of forces teams to go receiver heavy. But I feel like a lot of teams are very receiver heavy because if you look at this squad, especially, like it's just like Rob's team where you have three running backs. You have Fournette, you have Kamara. Yes, those guys are set. Again, you're not likely going to take those guys out of your lineup. But your next running back that you have in your roster is Tony Pollard, who, yes, he got time. He was okay when he carried the ball, but that's behind Zeke, who you can't get off the field unless he's dinged up. So really, is he even worth a roster spot for somebody without Zeke? Or are you really hoping for an injury to Zeke, and like that's when you kind of get your value? But you can't really, sit there and project that by any means. So like
Right.
his receivers, I like a lot. I can't sit here and say I don't. I like Evans. I like Ridley. I like Marquise Brown because he's a home run hitter, and that offense seems to be those guys. It strives with those guys. Andrews, Brown, those guys did more of the same thing. Hardman's kind of a home run hitter for Kansas City. Obviously, playing alongside Tyreek and Kelsey, you're going to get open when you're on the field. If they don't really give him the snaps he deserves and kind of put in Watkins, his value takes a hit. Last year, he had 26 grabs for 538 yards and 6 touchdowns. So you're telling me on the year he had 20 catches that weren't touchdowns. The rest of them were TDs. Like that,
Yeah.
to me, to the ratio of that is pretty good. So if he gets more snaps, I think he's going to be a big sleeper. But he's not going to help you. You can't put him in that RB slot. That bottom line, that to me is the biggest issue for this team. I love his running backs that he has in that slot, but again, the depth here is the worst I've seen on any team.
And the thing with it too is if Fournette and Kamara stay healthy, he'll be fine. And that's the thing when we and you do draft grades, right? We don't like to see too much of like, all right, if they get hurt, right? But sometimes you got to look at that.
Yeah.
If Fournette and Kamara stay healthy, he never has to really worry about the running back position. But if they aren't, or if they struggle, then he will. But you're right. I mean, I like his lineup a lot. I think he's hoping for a couple of these receivers on his bench to kind of break out a little bit. Jeffrey was hurt last year. Like you mentioned about Harbin could be a sleeper. I think AJ Green bounces back. I know he's getting a little bit older, but I think he's going to be fine this year. He's going to be 100%. I know he's 32 years old, but I think Green's a decent flex option this year as well. I like the tight end in Higbee. Didn't get in the end zone a ton last year either. And honestly, I think out of Godwin and Evans, I know Godwin's kind of that big home run threat and stuff like that. Brady likes his big boys. I think if anybody has an uptick this year, I think Evans, instead of 67 catches, I think we could see him closer to 80 this year. So overall, I like Justin's team. I think his lineup is really, really solid. I just worry a little bit about the I think, like I said, we that floor ceiling word comes up again, where I think a lot of his receivers are kind of at a floor, and I'm not sure any of them have like that much higher of a ceiling where they're gonna break out for 1,000 or 1,100 yards. So overall, I do like Justin's team. I don't love it, and I gave it a B minus. What did you do?
Yep, I'm on par with you there. I do like it. I don't necessarily love it. I gave him a B minus as well. This kind of, again, seems to be a trend in this division. It's kind of hard to separate these guys when it comes to grading too.
Oh, for sure, no doubt about it. Let's move on to the last team here, Kyle. Kyle has been in the league 3 years now, along with Peter. He's 27-12. He's made the playoffs every single year. That's a very, very good win percentage. He's 1-3 in the postseason, though, so he's looking to advance off that. Here's the thing. I think in every single year we've done one of these shows, it seems like I don't like his team. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but every year we do these shows, me and him just have completely different strategies when it comes to fantasy drafting a little bit. I think he goes for a little bit more of like, I don't know what the right word is for it, but he's just more of a wild card. He does things a little differently. I know he didn't do the whole drafting a kicker and a tight end last year as well. Interesting strategy. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't see a lot of value in it because all you're really doing is waiting till week before the first game is. You're hearing a little bit more about what's going on in practice, and then you're cutting someone based off that, and then you're picking up a tight end. Tight end is the weakest position in fantasy when it comes to offense, and you just didn't draft one. I don't know about that. And he got lucky last year. I don't want to say lucky, but he did have Waller for a bit last year, which bailed him out quite a bit. Here's my thing with Kyle's team. Loaded up on running back, which is why probably a lot of teams loaded up on receiver. Maybe Dobbins gets a lot of carries. Cohen's an okay fantasy option. Justin Jackson sounds like he will be the two back there in LA. And like I said, I don't think Eckler totally gets 25, 30 touches a game. Justin Jackson's going to get some touches this year, so I do like him. Kerryon Johnson, we'll see. Again, been in the league a couple years now, hasn't quite established that role. They drafted DeAndre Swift where they did for a reason. Madison, again, if Cook's healthy, Madison really should never be startable in a sense. Deshaun Jackson, old. Lazard, ugh. Those Packers receiving core is ugly. Honestly, Crim, me and Kyle draft differently. His track record has proven so far he has good teams every year. Okay, I think this is arguably right there with Chad as the worst team in the league. And I'm not trying to bash him. I could be totally wrong. That's why we do these things. David Johnson, I'm not high on. I know he's still young. I know he's been banged up. But really, what have we seen David Johnson do these last year and a half? And could his success early have been a fluke? Because it's not like David Johnson was that great for all that long. Kind of a flash in the pan. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, first round pick. I know it's KC. I know it's the hot shot rookie. But hell, I had trouble picking Jacobs in like round 3 last year because he was a rookie. You picked Edwards-Helaire at 7 over Jacobs, over some other top running backs. Oh, and you paired him with Tyreek Hill. Now, I'm not saying running back receivers are bad combos. If a team could get away with it, it's KC. But still, I don't know, Crim. I like his pass catching options in Hill, Cup, and Shark. I think that's really solid. And he did pair a lot of running backs because he feels like he has the receivers down. So he got a lot of running backs. You know, Kyle's always trying to trade. So he might be trying to, have some trade bait and some trade pieces here. And that's the strategy he's going for. But on paper, in terms of do I think Kyle's team's going to win ball games in fantasy based off what I'm seeing now, I don't think this is that great of a team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the opposite side of this right here. I'm looking at Kyle's team, and I'm looking at it for what it is right now and what it can be weeks from now. And that's kind of what I've put into it. Now, the team itself right now has holes, obviously. No tight end, no kicker. You need those things to kind of make your roster whole anyways. But he does kind of have leverage when it comes to trading because you've got your receivers. You don't have a lot of depth. I mean, you have Tyreek, you have Cooper Kupp, you have Chark. You have three solid receivers.
Theoretically, you're hoping they stay in the lineup all year.
Yeah. I mean, you could take Chark out if one of the running backs like Dobbins starts to pick up steam or Tariq picks up steam. Like he kind of took the Dave approach there, where he's taking guys who they have low floors but very high ceilings, and you can kind of get them later in the draft. Madison and Scott to me are kind of waste picks in my opinion. You could have grabbed a receiver there and then a somewhat decent tight end at that point, but he's kind of forcing people's hands to trade with him, which makes sense if that's what you're trying to do. The core of the team, though, I'm a fan of. I do like the Tyreek Hill. I'm higher on David Johnson than you are. Cooper Kupp last year was an absolute monster. Who knows if he repeats that, but you're hoping he does just because, he needs to be, what you picked him for. And Chark was solid too. Like his receivers are good. His running backs to me are solid. Like you'll play Johnson weekly, you'll play Edwards-Helaire weekly. If you can get Dobbins to go or Tariq Cohen kind of is a better fit with that, whoever's under center with the Bears. Justin Jackson gets enough carries to make him viable. Carry-on beats out Swift for more carries than the rookie will get. Like you've got options, and it's going to work in your favor if two of those guys kind of pick up the steam you want them to. But I don't think it's that bad of a team. I don't hate it as much as you do.
And here's my thing too, and this is by no means saying Tyreek Hill isn't an amazing receiver either, and he's fun to watch. He's electric. Here's my thing. I think he gets drafted a bit too early in fantasy, and the main reason I'm saying that is because he gets banged up a little bit. He's smaller, he's skinny. He can get banged up a bit, miss some games. He only had 2 games over 100 yards last year, and for being such a big home run threat, you would expect a little bit more of that. And he also had a lot of games where he just wasn't scoring, and if he was scoring, it was maybe once a game. Now again, still scored some touchdowns last year, had 7, missed 4 games. But even still, in 12 games or 11 games, for being such a big home run threat in that offense, in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, he played 11 games last year, Crim. Those numbers to me don't scream top pick. But we'll see. I like Tyreek Hill. Like I said, he's fun to watch, but I think I'm a little bit more wary on him being a high 2, mid 2 second round pick in fantasy. So that's kind of where I'm at with that as well. So we think a little bit differently. Like I said, I love his receivers overall. Kupp, Hill, and Shark should all get 1,000 yards this year. Should be big touchdown threats, but we'll see. I mean, obviously Kyle's team is geared for making moves eventually, right? Because eventually his receivers are going to have buys. He has no receivers on his bench really, outside of Jackson and Lazard, who combined for about 500 yards last year. So overall, I did not like his team. But again, I've said that before. I think I've said it the last 2 years, and he's completely proven me wrong. So I'm going to give Kyle's team a C, and he's going to prove me wrong and probably go 10-3. What are you going to give him?
I gave Kyle's team a B+.
All right, B+. So that gives up our 12 teams. So overall, Crim, with those 12 teams being graded, I don't know if you're going by grades or what you're doing or going kind of what you're looking at in the division. What are your 3 playoff teams in Division 1?
All right. I'm not basing it necessarily off of grade because I know that you're going to meet matchups where you're graded higher than this team and you'll probably lose just because that's fantasy. I'm keeping myself out of the equation just because I'll sit here and tell you till I'm blue in the face I'm making the playoffs just because there's no games played.
Be ballsy, Crim. If you think your team's in, count them in.
I mean, okay, I do think I make it. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't. I do think I make it, but anybody would say that about their team unless they really hate it. So that's why it's hard to say I wouldn't. I think with me included, I think it's myself, your team, and Jay. If I'm not in there, I'm kind of being non-biased, and I'm taking myself out of the equation entirely. I think that it becomes you and Jay along with Trey's team.
All right, my three teams in Division One are going to be Crimson, Peter, and Jay. Those are the top three teams I like the most there. I didn't have myself in the playoffs last year and I ended up winning the whole thing. So maybe I'm just gonna kind of ride with that train. I think I'm gonna be right there in the mix. Like I said, I gave you a B plus, myself a B. I'm putting you in, even though I think your bench is a little bit weaker, but I think you're a little bit more balanced in the lineup aspect. So it's gonna be a fun race there for sure. I think Chad and Trey's team are gonna be coming up on the rear end, in my opinion. But so I got in Division One, I got you, Jay, and Peter. Division Two, who do you got?
Division two, to me, I, there aren't a lot of those guys kind of drafted the same. It was hard to differentiate the team outside of Dana's and Rob's team, just because the benches they were just that was the make or break for them. Those last two teams you talked about, I like Justin to make the playoffs in his first year, kind of make a statement, coming hot. I like Kyle's team to make the playoff just because that's me. Right now, it doesn't look like a playoff team. I know he'll make a move. I know he'll shore up somewhere with the running backs he has, just because running backs are like gold. So I'm kind of taking that into consideration. And the
Right.
third team there for me is Tyler.
And that's the thing. I think Kyle's team, as much as I said, I don't like it, I do think was one of the hardest teams to grade because it is such a wild card because that team right now is going to look so different in week 3 or 4 even. I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean that again, that's kind of how you're looking at it.
Yep.
That team's roster is going to look quite a bit different come week 3 or 4. But just from what I've got, my three playoff teams in Division Two are going to be Rob. I like Tyler's team a lot as well. I think Tyler might actually have the best team in the division. I really do. I think Tyler might have the best team in the division. And I do like Dave's team. I think Dave's team is solid. I think he went away from that Charger thing a little bit more this year. He didn't do that draft day trade that screwed him last year. I think Dave's team is solid. Like I said, don't think any of his running backs hit 1,000 yards. I think he's got some question marks. He's got some prove it guys. But really, when you look at his team, he has a lot of star power. If he would have drafted that team 2 years ago, Breeze, Gurley, Julio, Juju, Ty, you'd have been like, damn, it's a damn good team. So a lot of prove it guys, but I like Dave's team as well. So overall, Rob, Tyler, and Dave in Division Two, Crim, Jay, and Peter in Division One, and overall, Crim doesn't. I mean, you can basically say who you think's going to win the thing, but what team is, based on paper, who do you think is the best team in the league?
Mine.
Yours, all right.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I'm not going to sit here and just say mine and move on. I like my team the most just because I feel that running backs, again, this is a broken record. Running backs are the most important thing in fantasy for the most part, just because it's hard to get your hands on ones that are consistent. I've got Zeke, I've got Singletary, who's in line to probably have a better year. I mean, I wouldn't say substantially just because they have guys who can kind of take away carries from them. And if I need to make a move, I feel like for me, it's very easy to do so because I have Raheem Mostert, I have Tevin Coleman, I have Sony Michelle. Those are three guys that will get tick. They're not kind of wild cards where they might get tick. They have to earn that tick. They're going to get tick no matter what.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is I mean track record wise you've come close, right? You're 35 and 32 in 5 seasons. You've made the playoffs 4 times. You're 3 and 4 in the playoffs, so it's not like you're just in there and out. So you're getting to that point where it's about time you get there, you get in. So you get into the final and see what happens. My favorite team overall. Um, it was a toss up. I actually like the two highest grades I gave were they were all tied. I actually gave Jay, Tyler, and Rob all A minuses, and I gave Peter an A. So it was all between that. It's really really tough. There's a lot of good teams, a lot of good things going on. Overall, even though I gave Peter a higher grade because I like his bench a lot, I really really like Jay's team in Division One, but I also really, really like Tyler's team in Division
Yeah.
Two as well. And I'm gonna actually say, I think the best team in the league right now is Tyler. I think Tyler's got the best team. So,
Yeah. If,
uh,
if I have to give a team, like the best team outside of obviously who I think it's me, I like up against any other team. I like Jay.
Yeah.
Jay is kind of the same build as a team that we would build, just because it's very running back heavy.
Top receivers,
It's got
look at those,
everything.
thousands. I mean, Lockett, 1,000, Diggs, 1,000, Kittle, 1,000, and many people are expecting even a better year from Diggs, right? Because a little bit of a downish year last year in Minnesota. Ingram, 1,000 yards rushing. Barkley, 1,000 yards rushing. Like he's kind of got it all, and I think he's got a couple guys that are going to do even better in the backup. And Fant on the bench, Judy on the bench, Slayton on the bench. So yeah, I like Jay's team a lot as well. I think Jay and Tyler, top two teams in the league this year, in my eyes. So yeah. Any last thoughts, Crim?
Um, no, I'm excited to have everything get going. Excited to see, kind of how this thing kicks off. A lot of it in Division Two has been balanced, so I'm excited to see that race play out. Obviously, I'm excited to see our race play out too. But it's a clean slate. Everyone's got, we're all 0-0 going into week one. We've all kind of got expectations. We've all seen our little results thing that lies out of its teeth. So I'm just ready to get going.
I am too. I'm very, very excited. I know we haven't really mentioned it this show. Don't even want to entertain the idea, but I'm really happy football's back. I hope it stays back. I don't want anything crazy to go on. Fantasy football makes football as fun as it does. And, obviously with all the things going on in the world right now, we really hope we get a full fantasy season out of it. Because that's what makes football a ton of fun, right? So thank you guys. Year 6, it's going to be so much fun. This league has grown tremendously over all these years. We're really, really excited to have everybody on board, including our newcomer, Justin. It's going to be great. I think we're really building a really good league throughout. 12 great guys, really, really active. It's fun. We have a lot of good banter back and forth, keeping track of league history, some inside jokes, everything involved with it. I really, really do appreciate everybody being involved in the league, and it's really exciting to get going here in year 6. And me and Krim appreciate you guys listening in, tuning into the show. I'm sure we'll be absurdly wrong on some of these things. I actually kind of hope I am, because maybe I'll be wrong on my team again this year. But yeah, a lot of guys got things to prove this year. Trey, the only 5-year team never to make the playoffs. Dave has still not won a playoff game. He's been in league 5 years. Chad's never won a playoff game, been in league 5 years. So half the league has been in the league all the years. And 3 of them have never won a playoff game. So a lot of monkeys to get off backs this year. We'll see if it happens. And again, the 2 top teams, I think, Krim, Jay and Tyler, are the 2 teams that have never been in the playoffs yet. I know Tyler's only been in it 1 year, Jay too, but they're improving as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We really, really do appreciate it. If you've listened in this long, have a good 2020 season. Me and Krim will be back week to week to discuss this in future shows. Take care and have a good night.